My name is Rebecca Morgan Ellis. I'm 31 years old. 8 months ago, I was cleaning out my father's garage when I found a metal lockbox hidden behind an old water heater. Inside were 17 envelopes. Every envelope had my younger brother's name on it, and every single one contained money. Some held a few $100s. Some held thousands. The oldest envelope was dated May 2015. The newest one was only 3 weeks old. By the time I finished counting, the total was $84,300. $84,300. Money my parents claimed they never had when I needed help. Money they said didn't exist. Money they told me was impossible. The same parents who looked me in the eye when I was drowning in medical debt and said, "Honey, we wish we could do more." The same parents who told me they were struggling. The same parents who watched me work 70-hour weeks while secretly funding my brother's entire adult life. That afternoon, standing alone in that dusty garage, I realized something painful. The problem was never money. The problem was me. If you're listening right now, tell me where you're from in the comments. I read everyone. Now let me take you back to the beginning. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm a physical therapist at Rocky Mountain Rehabilitation Center. I've worked there for nearly 9 years. I help people learn how to walk again after strokes. I help accident victims rebuild muscles that no longer obey them. I spend my days teaching people that healing takes patience. What nobody tells you is that sometimes the deepest injuries don't happen in hospitals. Sometimes they happen at your own family dinner table. My younger brother, Jason Morgan, is 28, 3 years younger than me. Growing up, Jason was charming, funny, outgoing, the kind of kid who could talk himself out of trouble before most people realized trouble existed. Teachers loved him. Neighbors adored him. My mother adored him most of all. My mother, Patricia Morgan, is 61 years old, retired elementary school teacher, kind voice, warm smile. The type of woman who bakes cookies for new neighbors and remembers everyone's birthday. At least that's how most people see her. My father, Richard Morgan, is 64, former electrical contractor. Quiet, practical, the sort of man who measures twice and cuts once. For most of my childhood, he worked 6 days a week, long hours, hard work. Everything for the family, or so I thought. Growing up, there were always 2 sets of rules, Jason's rules and mine. If Jason forgot homework, Mom drove it to school. If I forgot homework, I needed to learn responsibility. If Jason got a speeding ticket, Dad paid it. If I needed money for textbooks in college, I got a lecture about budgeting. At the time, I convinced myself it wasn't favoritism, just different circumstances, different personalities, different needs. That's what parents always said. Rebecca, you're stronger. Rebecca, you're more mature. Rebecca, you're independent. Funny how those words sound positive, until you realize they are often excuses. Excuses for giving less. By 2021, my life looked stable from the outside. I owned a small townhouse. I had a good career. I was engaged to a wonderful man named Michael Ellis, 33 years old, civil engineer, steady, reliable, the kind of person who shows up every single time. Then everything changed. In February 2022, I was diagnosed with severe endometriosis. The pain had been building for years. I ignored it, worked through it, told myself it wasn't serious, until one morning I collapsed during a patient session. The surgery was successful, but insurance didn't cover everything, not even close. When the bills finished arriving, I owed nearly $29,000. $29,000. For the first time in my life, I asked my parents for help. Not a gift, a loan. I remember the exact date, March 18th, 2022. Friday evening, 6:42 p.m. I sat at my kitchen table staring at my phone for almost 20 minutes before making the call. Mom answered on the second ring. I explained everything, the surgery, the bills, the payment plans, the stress. Then I asked, would you and Dad be willing to loan me some money? Even a small amount? There was silence, long silence. Then came the sigh that changes everything. Sweetheart, we wish we could. I already knew what was coming. We've had a rough year financially. Dad got on the phone next. More explanations, more reasons. Investment losses, house repairs, medical expenses, retirement concerns. By the end of the conversation, the answer was clear. No, not because they didn't love me, because they couldn't afford it. At least that's what they said. So Michael and I handled it ourselves. We postponed our wedding, canceled our honeymoon, sold furniture, refinanced debt, picked up extra work. I spent weekends treating private clients in their homes. Michael worked overtime on construction projects. For 18 months, Every decision revolved around money. Every dollar had a purpose. Every expense became a debate. Every dream was delayed. Meanwhile, Jason seemed to be doing surprisingly well. New apartment, new SUV, frequent vacations, weekend trips to Las Vegas, expensive golf clubs, designer watches. When I asked how he afforded everything, he always laughed. Good investments. That's all he'd say. Good investments. Looking back now, I almost admire the simplicity of the lie, because sometimes the most effective lies are the shortest ones. And I believed him, until the day I opened that lockbox. For the first few hours after finding the lockbox, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe the money wasn't what it looked like. Maybe Dad was holding cash for someone else. Maybe the envelopes were old and unused. Maybe there was some perfectly reasonable answer that would make me feel guilty for jumping to conclusions. I wanted that explanation, desperately, because the alternative was unbearable. The alternative meant my parents had lied to me for years. I put the lockbox back exactly where I'd found it, behind the water heater, covered by an old tarp. Then I drove home. The entire 40-minute drive felt unreal. Michael noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" I set my purse on the kitchen counter, took off my shoes, walked straight to the refrigerator, poured a glass of water, drank half of it in one swallow. Then I said 3 words. "I found something." His expression changed. Not panic, concern. The kind of concern that comes from knowing someone well enough to recognize when they're struggling. "What did you find?" I told him everything. The envelopes, the dates, the amounts, the total. $84,300. When I finished, Michael didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, he asked the question I was avoiding. "Do you think your parents gave Jason that money?" I looked down at the glass in my hands. I don't know, but I did know. Deep down, I already knew, because suddenly dozens of things that never made sense were starting to fit together. Jason's apartment, Jason's vacations, Jason's endless ability to land on his feet no matter how badly he screwed up. For years I had assumed he was luckier than me. Maybe he wasn't luckier. Maybe he was subsidized. That night I barely slept. At 2:17 a.m., I sat in bed scrolling through old social media posts. Jason at a luxury resort in Cabo. Jason holding courtside basketball tickets. Jason standing beside a brand new SUV. Jason golfing in Scottsdale. Jason in Hawaii. Jason in Miami. Jason in Nashville. Jason everywhere. Always smiling. Always thriving. Always somehow financially comfortable, despite changing jobs almost every year. The next morning, I did something I wasn't proud of. I started calculating. I opened a spreadsheet, listed every major purchase I could remember him making. Apartment deposits, vehicle payments, vacations, furniture, electronics. The numbers climbed frighteningly fast. By lunchtime, I estimated he'd spent well over $100,000 during the previous 7 years, far more than his income reasonably supported. The evidence wasn't proof, but it was enough to make my stomach hurt. 3 days later, my mother called. "Rebecca, we're having family dinner Sunday, 6 o'clock. I almost declined. Almost. Then I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wanted to observe, not participate. Observe. I arrived at 5:58 p.m. Jason was already there, standing in the kitchen, laughing with Mom. The moment he saw me, he grinned. "Hey sis." I forced a smile. "Hey." His watch caught the light. Rolex. Or at least it looked like one. I remembered him complaining 6 months earlier about credit card debt. Funny how quickly financial hardship disappeared. Dinner felt different, not because anyone else had changed, because I had. Every interaction suddenly carried a new meaning. Mom refilled Jason's wine glass before he asked. Dad helped Jason with paperwork for a business idea. Mom packed leftovers specifically for Jason. Mom reminded Jason to take vitamins. Mom asked Jason whether he needed anything. Anything. The word echoed in my head. Need. When I needed help paying medical bills, there was nothing available. When Jason needed something, apparently there was always a solution. Halfway through dinner, Mom smiled at him. "How's the condo search going?" I froze. "Condo?" Jason nodded. "Pretty good. Found anything?" "Maybe." "Good." Mom beamed. Actually beamed. My chest tightened. Because when Michael and I bought our townhouse, Mom's response had been completely different. Not excitement. Concern. Warnings. Questions about affordability. Questions about risk. Questions about debt. Jason mentioned buying property. Mom looked proud. I mentioned buying property. Mom looked worried. It was a small difference, but once you see favoritism, you start seeing it everywhere. After dinner, while everyone moved into the living room, I wandered toward the hallway bathroom, not because I needed it, because I needed a minute alone. As I passed the home office, I noticed the door was slightly open. Inside sat a filing cabinet. Gray metal, locked, except the top drawer wasn't fully closed. Just half an inch. Most people wouldn't have noticed. I did. For several seconds, I stood there staring, my heart pounding. I shouldn't look. I knew that, but then another thought appeared. Hadn't I spent years respecting boundaries that nobody else respected? Hadn't I accepted every explanation without question? Hadn't I earned at least one answer? The drawer slid open quietly. Inside were folders, tax records, insurance forms, investment statements. Then I saw Jason's name, more than once. I pulled out the first folder, loan agreement. Jason Morgan. Amount, $15,000. Date, August 2018. My hands shook. I opened another, loan agreement. Jason Morgan. Amount, $12,500. Date, March 2020. Another, $8 США 000. Another, $20 США 000. Another, $10 США 000. I couldn't breathe, not because of the money, because of the dates. August 2018. The same month I took a second job to afford graduate certification courses. March 2020. The same month Mom told me everyone needed to tighten their belts financially. There it was. On paper, thousands and thousands and thousands, not gifts, loans, at least officially. I quickly took photos, every page, every amount, every signature. Then I put everything back exactly where I'd found it, closed the drawer, walked to the bathroom, locked the door, and stared at my reflection. My face looked pale, older somehow, as if I'd aged years in a single evening. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Rebecca? Mom, you okay? I opened the door. Yeah. You don't look well. I'm fine. She smiled, that familiar motherly smile. The one that used to comfort me. Now it felt different. Now I wondered how many secrets lived behind it. On the drive home, I showed Michael the photos. His hands tightened around the steering wheel. These are loans. Apparently. Has Jason paid any of them back? I laughed. A bitter laugh. Do you really think so? Michael didn't answer. Because we both knew the answer. The next day I called Jason. For the first time in months. We met for coffee near his apartment. He arrived 10 minutes late. Designer sunglasses. Perfect haircut, confident smile. The same Jason everyone loved. The same Jason who never seemed worried about anything. For a while we made small talk. Work, weather, sports. Then I decided to stop dancing around it. How's the condo search going? His smile widened. Pretty good. What's your budget? He shrugged. Depends. Depends on what? My financing. There it was again. Financing. Such an innocent word. I leaned forward. Mom and Dad helping? For a fraction of a second, something flashed across his face. Gone almost immediately. But I saw it. Panic. Tiny. Brief. Real. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. He looked away, then laughed. Too quickly. You're being weird. No, I said quietly. I'm finally paying attention. The smile disappeared. And for the first time in my life, my brother looked nervous. Very nervous. Neither of us spoke. Finally, he set down his coffee cup. What exactly are you asking me, Rebecca? I met his eyes. How much money have Mom and Dad given you? The color drained from his face. Not all at once. Slowly, like water leaving a sink. And in that moment, before he said a single word, I got my answer. Because innocent people don't react that way. Guilty people do. Very guilty people. Jason stared at me. I stared back, neither willing to blink first. Then he quietly said something I will never forget. They wanted to help. Not, what are you talking about? Not, I never got money. Not, you're crazy. Just 4 words. They wanted to help. And suddenly everything became very, very clear. For 3 days I said nothing. Not to my parents. Not to Jason. Not even to Michael beyond the basics. I needed time. Time to think. Time to calm down. Time to decide what mattered more. The money. Or the truth. By the 4th day, I knew the answer. It was never about the money. The money simply proved the truth. The truth was what hurt. On Friday morning, I called my father. Dad, can we meet? His voice sounded tired. Of course. We met at a diner halfway between our homes. A small place we'd been going to since I was a child. Same booths. Same coffee. Same smell of bacon and pancakes. Dad looked older than I remembered. Not physically. Emotionally. Like someone carrying a weight he hadn't expected to carry. I slid my phone across the table, The photos of the loan agreements. One by one, he stared at them. His face slowly drained of color. Then he closed his eyes. For a long time he said nothing. Finally he whispered, "I didn't know there were this many." I blinked. "What do you mean?" His shoulders slumped. "I knew your mother helped him sometimes." The words hit me hard. Sometimes? Small amounts. At least that's what I thought. I felt sick. "How much did you think?" "A few thousand over the years." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it wasn't. "Try 84,000. Dad looked down at the table. Then he did something I had never seen before. He cried. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just silent tears. The kind older men tried desperately to hide. "I failed you." I swallowed hard. "Dad." I did. His voice broke. I kept telling myself everything was fine because it was easier. He wiped his eyes. "I thought your mother was treating you both fairly." He looked at me. "God, Rebecca. I thought she was treating you both fairly." For the first time in years I believed him. He truly hadn't known. Maybe he should have. Maybe he should have paid more attention. But I could see the regret in his face. Real regret. Not excuses. Not explanations. Regret. And somehow that mattered. A week later, I organized a family meeting. No surprises. No ambushes. Everyone knew exactly why we were there. Sunday, 6 o'clock. My parents' house. The same dining room where hundreds of family meals had happened. The same room where so many things had gone unsaid. Jason arrived first. Then Mom. Then Dad. Michael sat beside me. Quiet. Supportive. Steady as always. Mom looked annoyed. Not nervous. Not guilty. Annoyed. As if this entire situation was inconvenient. I placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of every document. Every loan. Every transfer. Every record. The evidence spoke for itself. No one touched it. No one needed to. We all knew what was inside. Finally, Mom folded her arms. "What exactly is the purpose of this meeting?" I stared at her. "The truth." She sighed. Immediately. That sigh again. The sigh that meant she had already decided she was right. "Rebecca, we've already discussed this." "No," I said calmly. "We haven't." Silence. I looked at Jason. "How much have you paid back?" His eyes dropped to the table. Nothing. The answer was written all over his face. Nothing. Not a dollar. Not one. Mom jumped in immediately. He was going through difficult periods. So was I. He needed help. So did I. He struggled. I laughed softly. The room went quiet. "You think I didn't struggle?" Nobody answered. So I continued. "When I was drowning in medical debt, where was this help?" Silence. When Michael and I postponed our wedding, where was this help? Silence. When I worked 70-hour weeks, where was this help? Still silence. I looked directly at my mother. When I asked for a loan and you told me there was no money, my voice cracked slightly. Where exactly was $84,000? Mom looked away. For the first time all evening. Away. Not at me. Away. And that told me everything. Finally she spoke. "You were always capable." There it was. The sentence. The same sentence. The same excuse. The same justification. Year after year. "You were always capable." I nodded slowly. "I know." Mom seemed relieved, as though I'd finally understood. Then I continued. "The problem is that being capable shouldn't disqualify someone from being loved." Her expression changed, just slightly. I kept going. "You treated my independence like a reason to invest less in me." Nobody moved. Nobody interrupted. I spent years believing I wasn't hurt because I was stronger. I looked around the table. But strong people still need support. I looked at Jason. Strong people still need parents. Then I looked back at Mom. Strong people still deserve fairness. The room was silent. Completely silent. Finally, Jason spoke. His voice was barely above a whisper. I never asked for most of it. I believed him. Mostly. Because the truth was more complicated than greed. Jason hadn't created the favoritism. He had benefited from it. There was a difference. Not a huge one. But a difference. Mom immediately defended him. "See?" I held up a hand. "I'm not blaming Jason." Everyone looked surprised. Especially Jason. "I'm blaming the people who were supposed to be parents." The words landed heavily. Mom's face hardened. "You have no idea what sacrifices I made." I looked at her. "No," I said quietly. "I think I finally do." For the first time in my life, I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I thought I'd be furious. Instead, I felt something else. Sadness. Deep sadness. Because I suddenly understood something. My mother wasn't going to apologize. Not because she couldn't. Because she genuinely didn't think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she'd helped the child she believed needed it most. Over and over. for years, without realizing the damage she was doing to the other child. Maybe she loved us both. Maybe she truly did. But love without fairness can still leave scars. And those scars were real. I stood up. Michael stood with me. Dad looked devastated. Jason looked ashamed. Mom looked defensive. The same roles we'd all been playing for years. I'm not here for repayment, I said. I'm not here for revenge. Nobody spoke. I'm here because I needed to stop wondering whether I mattered. I swallowed hard. And now I know. The truth hung in the air. Heavy, permanent, unavoidable. I walked around the table, bent down, and hugged my father. His shoulders shook immediately. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I squeezed him tighter. I know. Then I stepped back, looked at Jason. I hope things work out for you. His eyes filled with tears. Rebecca. But he couldn't finish. And maybe there was nothing left to say. Finally, I looked at my mother. The woman who had raised me. The woman who had packed my lunches, helped with school projects, cheered at soccer games. The woman who loved me, just not equally. And somehow that hurt most of all. I love you, I said. Her eyes widened. But I need distance. For the first time that evening, her confidence cracked. Just a little. Rebecca? No. I shook my head. Not today. And then Michael and I left. The drive home felt strangely peaceful. Not happy. Not victorious. Peaceful. Because uncertainty had ended. The question that haunted me for years finally had an answer. Several months have passed since then. Life is quieter now. Dad calls every week. Sometimes twice. Jason and I text occasionally. Nothing deep, but it's honest. Mom has reached out several times. Long messages, explanations, reasons, justifications. Still no real apology. Maybe one day, maybe not. I've stopped waiting. Last month, Michael and I finally had the wedding celebration we postponed years ago. Nothing extravagant. 42 guests, a small venue, good food, good music, good people. We paid for every dollar ourselves, and for the first time, that felt empowering instead of painful. Near the end of the night, Michael stood up to give a toast. He looked at me, smiled, then said something I'll never forget. Rebecca spent years believing she had to earn love by being strong. The room became quiet, but the strongest thing she's ever done was realizing she never had to earn it at all. I cried, right there in front of everyone, not because I was sad, because for the first time, I believed it. The truth is this: some families don't break because of money. They break because money reveals what people value. My parents didn't lose me because they helped my brother. They lost me because they hid it, because they lied, because they expected me to sacrifice quietly while pretending everything was equal, and because they called neglect independence. Today I'm 31 years old. I have a husband who shows up, friends who show up, a life I've built myself. And while I wish my family story had ended differently, I'm grateful for one thing: the lockbox, because sometimes the thing that breaks your heart is the same thing that finally opens your eyes. My name is Rebecca Morgan Ellis. I'm 31 years old, and for the first time in my life, I no longer need my family's approval to know my worth.